Good evening and welcome to another fireside chat. My best friend was making fun of me the other night by saying that I know you put these things and prepare them very well, and you make it sound as if you're very conversational, um, and he's right in the sense that I guess it's conversational, but I'm not preparing at all, other than jotting a few things down on a sheet of paper. I could kind of show you. I just jot a few things down that I want to talk about, and that's about it. And then just kind of go from there. And I guess it was the having done the radio show for 10, 12 years or so, and having to talk for an hour. I got used to doing so and just talking stream of consciousness. And I think it's probably the best way to relate and talk about these things with you. So that you can kind of get to know what our thinking is right now, what our strategy is, what we're looking at, and how things are progressing with the virus and with the market. And the first thing I would say is that with the stock market rallying the last week, it's been nice and making people feel a little bit better that there's hope. And a lot of people thinking, okay, that was it, that was the bottom. And the honest answer is I really don't know. I don't think so. It's certainly possible. I really am buoyed by the fact that the federal government has acted very swiftly and the Federal Reserve has acted very swiftly. And I think that takes any type of depression off of the table. In learning from the mistakes we made during the Great Depression, and then seeing how it took time for us to act during the financial crisis, certainly Congress acted very quickly. And if you go through the 880 pages of the law that was signed into effect, and this weekend we sent out a synopsis of that to help you with some of the benefits from that law. It just takes a tremendous time to go through all of those issues, and there are definitely some benefits that are in that law for small businesses, which we sent out separately to our business clients. And to you, and especially to those who are impacted by the coronavirus, especially those much more up here in the New Jersey, New York area, where it's having a more immediate effect. So from that perspective, it was really nice to see Congress and the Federal Reserve acting very rapidly, and that they've promised to continue to act. And on that note, some clients on the more fiscally conservative front have asked, what is this doing to our national debt? And during the last quarterly review I sent out, I kind of showed that our national debt is at the level it was during World War II. And there's a lot of debate as to what is too much debt, and is this going to be problematic for our children or our grandchildren? And the answer is we don't know, right? Capitalism is a new 200, 300-year endeavor. And I'm never going to have the time to get a PhD and work on my confidence theory, nor win the Nobel Prize for economics on it, but it really is built on confidence. And so you could have a nation that has 30% debt to GDP, like Iceland or Ireland, and be on the verge of collapse or collapse. And it's simply because that nation may not be strong enough for people to have the confidence in it. It's the same thing with banks, especially when they didn't have FDIC insurance, when people felt that the bank didn't have the wherewithal to suffer and make it through a particular financial crisis. Everybody would make a run on the bank and demand their money out. And of course, it's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, where Jimmy Stewart says, "No, you don't understand, Mary. Your money's in Harry's house, and Harry, your money's in Sally's house." That's more how banks work. They don't have all the money in the back of a vault, and that's why FDIC insurance is so important. So the question of is what is too much debt is a good one, and it's one that we should start debating after this crisis. And I don't know, if you're a young doctor and you make $400,000 a year, a bank is happy to lend you 3 times your income. They'd be happy to lend you the money to buy $1 million home. And maybe 300% debt to GDP is the right number for governments if people feel good enough about that. America is fortunate enough that we're the reserve currency of the world. Switzerland can't be. China can't. So it's nice that we're the economy that people still look to as a reserve currency. Certainly nobody's been worried about Japan's debt to GDP at 200%. We're going to be going up to 110% debt to GDP now. And it's our entitlement systems that'll have to be fixed at some point. So I did write a blog when a client asked me about this thoughtful question about our debt, and I'll be sending the blog out. It was an email to him that I've basically made into a blog, and I'll send it out down the road a little bit more, because I know people are concerned already about our debt. But for right now, spending is very important, because in times of crisis, you and I tighten up. We don't spend, right? And we're not spending. Andy and I were just talking about that, how, geez, we're just not spending money like we used to. And it's because the only thing we're spending money on is once a week that I go out and get the food for our family and bring it back. And there's no, the $300 I have in my wallet, which seems to just evaporate when the kids are always grabbing it. Well, the kids are here and they're not spending that money. So you and I don't spend. Businesses don't spend. I'm not hiring right now. Businesses aren't hiring right now. In fact, we're going to be breaking records for, we just had 3+ million on the unemployment rolls, and the economic numbers are continually going to be poor as we end this quarter and go into the next quarter. And so I don't expect we're going to have a V-shaped, you keep hearing economists talk about a V-shaped recovery. The stock market might be V-shaped in the sense that it may look forward when we start getting some good news. But I don't think we're going to have a V-shaped recovery. I think there's more bad news to come. The president was talking about tonight about the difficult times ahead as hospitals get overrun here in New York. And we're going to see numbers go up. The good news from that is that we will have a flattening. The social distancing is taking effect. This is now, again, fully a healthcare issue. And how long it takes us to deal with the healthcare issues is going to be how quickly we're able to recover. And I think we're getting good news on that front, and we'll have good news in the next week or two, and that healthcare companies are really stepping up and businesses are stepping up to provide the personal protective equipment and the testing, which is going to be key so that young people can again go out. I likened it again to being in a bunker. If your mission as a former Marine is to take that hill, the safest position often you would think is in that bunker and just kind of hunkering down and not ever charging up that hill. Of course, you won't get that mission and be able to take that hill. And in fact, the enemy can then start lobbing projectiles into your bunker, and it can make that position very unsafe too. So we're going to have to find this middle ground, much like South Korea has, of testing and getting people back to work, because not getting back to work can be very devastating also. Poverty and losing your job can lead to despair and a lack of hope, can lead to abuse in a household, can lead to suicide. So we're going to need to get the people who are healthy and are asymptomatic and don't have these issues, to get them to go back to work, the younger people, and then keep those who are most at risk in their homes. And keep them safe. And businesses who have older employees, let them and continue to work from home. And we'll work through that issue. So I just want to talk first about as I don't see a V-shaped recovery. Our strategy continues to be the same. We're just under 50% stock, and we're sticking with very high quality names, whether it's healthcare companies like Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer or Merck, and then your consumer staple companies like Coke and Pepsi, and others that I believe will hold up for us in terms of their dividend. Our income has changed very little. If you look at the high watermark of your portfolio back in February, or you look at your last statement and see the projections of your income, for example, let's say your portfolio was $1.2 million. You've lost the value. You're down to $1 million now, let's say. Your projected income was right around $61,000 when it was at your high watermark. Now it's at about $57,000, $58,000. So the income has changed very little from your portfolio, even though your portfolio values are less. Of course, we're spending a little bit less, so it's a time when we can stop taking as much money out if we don't need it. And also now under the new tax law, which was passed, you don't even have to take required minimum distributions, which is a really a tremendous benefit if you don't need it. So we've begun contacting all of our clients about whether or not they want it. If they keep needing the income, obviously they'll take it, but if they don't need their required minimum distribution, they don't have to take it. So I just kind of wanted to go through, a lot of the things here too. The last thing I wanted to cover on my very my very important sheet here, where I put a few things down, is the models. You're going to hear a lot of things that can be quite shocking, because we go back and forth between panic and then some optimism and hope. And sometimes it's difficult to stay hopeful. Even when I was going through survival training, when you're in a situation. You're always told to keep hope and keep faith with your fellow prisoners when you're going through a difficult time. And it's difficult to do, but it's something you can train yourself to do, to look at the positive sides and not look at such a negative. And oftentimes it takes turning off the TV and the news cycle, which is just bombards you, and realize that we will get through this. And people will eventually go back to work, and people will eventually spend, and business will come back. There will be some which are irreparably different. There will be a change, and certainly we've had a change in our thinking from our portfolios. And just driving out, when I did go out to get the groceries this weekend, you look at a lot of the businesses that are shut down right now and shuttered, and wonder, with so many people being laid off, are they going to, and whether they're not going to pay their landlord, and then the landlords, how are they going to make it if they're not getting paid? These will be difficult times, and so there will be some bankruptcies as we go through this process. But America will rebound. We will get back to work, and although it's difficult, look for the hopeful side. You're going to see some models, and again, these are the same models that tell you the stock market's going to do this or do that. And they're really nonsensical in a lot of ways, and it's just extremes. It's kind of like the scenario analysis that I do, where you look at the best case scenario, you look at the worst case scenario, and then you look at the most probable. You can prepare for the worst, and certainly we could have things get worse in the short term, and it could feel like it's getting worse. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that we can go ahead and think about how to flatten the curve, and that our amazing ingenuity and American companies are working very hard at fixing this health issue. And businesses also are adapting and working through the problems and still providing the services they need for their clients, for those that don't have to shut their doors or are working from a different perspective. So I know it's difficult to remain hopeful, but I think it's something, if you look at history, you'll see that we've overcome these things before. This isn't the Black Plague. I said it's not the zombie apocalypse. It's certainly not the Black Death. The good news is that the survivability rate is very high, and it's impacting our older community, and I think including myself, for those who are over 50. So I think that you have to really take care of yourself, be cognizant of that, and look ahead to the point where eventually we'll start working ourselves through. And at that point, the market will start to recover too, and it'll start to look forward and realize that we're on our way back. But in the meantime, there's going to be good news and bad news day to day. Try not to let the day to day hit you too hard. I know it's difficult, but it's an important thing to do when you're an investor. It's an important thing to do in life. As always, I appreciate your trust, and don't hesitate to call us if you have any questions. I'm always working. And so email or call anytime. All right, thank you, and keep the faith. Bye-bye.